Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope everyone at your end, including you, are safe. On behalf of All India Oracle Users Group, I would like to welcome you to Oracle Groundbreaker Yatra 2020 online webinar series. Registrations are free and still it takes only 2 minutes to complete. Please pass this information to your connections. We are in day 6, still we have hundreds of hours of learning. As you can see in this one picture, right? This is the largest Oracle Users Group webinar series with 14 days of um, non-stop learning, 125 plus hours of education. We have 100 plus speakers and 100 plus sessions. So one of the highlight of this, Oracle Groundbreaker Yatra is we were able to bring around 60 plus Oracle Ace and Java champions into one stage. This is normally happens at Oracle Open World, and we are really proud to host this event. Every day we are hosting around 8 sessions starting from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. IST with the proper breaks. So always refer our website for accurate timings. And today we are like already completed 6 sessions, and this is a 7th session. And just a brief introduction of AIOUG, All India Oracle Users Group, is one of the largest Oracle Users Group in the APAC region. This is something like a platform created for Oracle community to learn, network, share about Oracle. A brief history of Yatra. We normally run our annual conference called Sangam in Bangalore and Hyderabad alternative years. It was challenging for other users to locate it in other cities. To support them, we started taking bunch of key speakers to major cities in India, started with 5 cities in 2013. And last year we covered 10 cities in 15 days. And this year we were planning to do 15 cities in 20 days. And you guys know about due to global pandemic, we are hosting virtual online webinar. The good part of this webinar is we were able to bring most of Oracle gurus across the globe. So do not miss this unique opportunity to learn and expand your network. This is again very important slide. We encourage you to take a screenshot of this picture and tweet about this program using OGYatra and AIOUG hashtags. So 3 things you're going to achieve. One is basically showing your support to Oracle Users Group, and number 2 is convey or connect with speaker, and thanks to their valuable time. And also the final benefit is this is the only way you can connect other participants in this call virtually, right? Currently you can't see them. So these are 3 important things. And today's we have Edward Ruske. So Edward is Oracle ACE director, and he's also a co-founder CEO of Interrel Consulting, very famous company in USA. A co-author in best-selling book series, Look Smarter Than You Are with the Hyperion. And you can see his hobbies and skills. And also, he was, when we started in 2013, Edward was one of the speaker, Yatra. So thank you, Edward, and coming back and supporting us, right? Also, participants, please ask your questions in Q&A section, not in the chat. Edward will answer appropriately. With that, I'm handing over to Edward. Edward, please share your screen and start presenting. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I am extremely excited to be back as part of Yatra. I have, as you just heard, I came out in 2013 and fell in love with the country of India. I got to speak in 5 cities, and it's sad that I have to be here virtually, but it's happy that I am able to be here with you. I will be answering questions as we go along over the course of today. If you have any additional questions, please put these through the Q&A, and I'll be answering those as we go along. The world has changed a lot in the last 7 years. When I was out there in 2013, we were talking a lot about installed applications, on-premise applications, how we use OBIE to do business intelligence, or how we use Essbase. Oracle Analytics Cloud did not even exist at that point. So what we have changed is it has now become part of our lives, and everything we are doing now involves analytics. And it's changing the world because it's going from being a separate department to part of everything that we do. And it makes me think back to 100 years ago. And at the start of the 1900s, the 20th century, companies had these people called chief electricity officers, or CEO. This is not a joke. And their role was to help plug their facilities into the power grid. And these chief electricity officers were extremely powerful. Their department was treated as a separate entity in their organization. And until electricity became assumed, it became a utility that every department had access to. Until then, you had to go beg to this department to please add electricity to your group. But then eventually everyone had electricity. You no longer had to have a separate staff whose job it was to watch over electricity, and the role of the chief electricity officer disappeared because their work was complete. This is what's going to eventually happen because of cloud and digital technology. Analytics, IT, will not be a separate function. It will be part of all of our lives. And speaking of things becoming a natural part of our business lives, this is a picture of me. And all those things in that picture now fit in your pocket. And no one is clamoring to go back. I have a little nostalgia for the kitchen telephone with its spiral cord that would always get tangled and wrapped around itself, but you will get my iPhone from my cold dead hand, because while we might long for the past, no one wants to go back to it. We need to live in the present while we prepare for the future. The world of analytics is going through not an evolution, it's going through a full-blown revolution. We as leaders, whether we are doing database administration, whether we're doing analysis, whether we are coding, programming, maintaining databases, building databases, we have to be at the forefront. If we want to keep employed, and I'm going to talk a lot about jobs and the economy during this presentation, if we want to keep being employed, we have to blaze that trail. We have to lead with artificial intelligence. We have to make sure our skills understand machine learning. So the content I'm going to deliver you today is going to talk about this business analytics revolution that's been happening and how it's changing our lives and our jobs today. The numbers I'm going to be showing you are in US dollars. According to International Data Corporation, the global spending for artificial intelligence, AI systems, will be almost 100 billion US dollars in the year 2023. This year, it's right now 37.5 billion. So it's going to add 60 billion US in the next 3 years. And who is going to get those jobs and who is going to be on the forefront of AI is what a lot of countries are asking ourselves. In the words of Bill Gates, we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years, and we underestimate the change that will occur in the next 10. In other words, change seems really slow until we realize it was actually really fast. Transformation is exponential, so we need to be. It's not about how fast we change, it's about how much we are accelerating. We can't let ourselves be lulled into inaction. So saying artificial intelligence and machine learning is going to get really long-winded. So instead of saying artificial intelligence, in a lot of cases, I'm going to say AI. And instead of saying machine learning, I'm going to say ML. And people think that these are independent. They're not. Machine learning is part of artificial intelligence. AI really dates back to just after World War II. And we started developing computers to mimic human behavior. The Turing test actually dates back to Alan Turing, who invented a computer to crack the Enigma coding machine the Nazis were using back in the 1940s. And Turing said, if a human can interact with a computer and not tell the difference from a human, that computer has attained artificial intelligence. So what we did for a lot of the 1950s and 60s and 70s is we tried to get computers to do what we would do as humans. And we would program them. When you are told this, respond this way, or when someone types in this, type back this. Well, then we learned that if we keep teaching computers just do this like we do, it can never be smarter than we are. Also, it would take forever to train those computers. So we created a concept called machine learning, ML. And ML is part of AI. And ML is an artificial intelligence technique that gives computers the ability to learn without us having to tell them exactly what to know. And machine learning, for instance, we have chess computers who have long since been able to beat humans. And we taught these chess computers, well, when you're playing the game of chess, here's some good strategy to memorize. Now take that strategy and use it to get better and better and think farther out so we don't have to tell you how many moves to go out, just keep thinking. Well, then somebody came up in the last decade with the idea, what if we didn't even tell it the strategy? What if we didn't tell it, oh, this is how good players play chess? What if we gave it just the basic rules? And we told it pawns move one square ahead. Rooks, castles can move in a straight line as far forward or side to side or backward as they want. Bishops can move diagonally. How good can the computer be? Well, there was a computer called Google AlphaGo Zero, and they taught it the rules of Go, and it quickly beat the best Go person and Go computer in the world. Then they took that same routine and they said, what if we just told you the simple rules of how the piece moves in chess, and within 3 hours, it beat the world's best chess computer. So deep learning is really a subset of machine learning, which is a subset of artificial intelligence. They are not interchangeable. When in doubt, refer to artificial intelligence. But each one of these has evolved. It evolved from something where humans told it what to do to something where the computers are coming up with new ideas on their own. So Facebook, a couple of years ago, wrote algorithms to spot posts on Facebook that violate an individual country's laws or the site's own policies. And algorithms have lots of advantages over humans. They don't sleep. They don't take holidays. They don't complain about their performance reviews. They are really quick. They scan thousands of messages a second, and they don't tire. And of course, algorithms don't need to be paid. But humans went from saying, look out for these keywords, to the algorithm saying, well, what types of things tend to get flagged by people? But now the algorithms are working together with the humans, where the human moderators are seeing what the algorithms are flagging, and they're making sure the algorithms are not going off in an odd direction. So we are using the humans to provide a sanity check to the computers. But there are some cases where the computers are just all off on their own. The AI is coming up with their own conclusions. For instance, Netflix. When you see the AI recommend what shows or movies to watch next, that is entirely algorithm based. The only thing that a human can do to override it at Netflix is if they want to promote a new show or something that's coming out. They can say, always put this at the top. But other than that, the AI will look at what you've looked at, what shows you watch, what movies you see. It will find other people who are like that, and it will make recommendations. And it does all that through AI, and it changes in real time. TikTok, until it got banned in India, was using artificial intelligence to recommend to people throughout India which new users to follow. And this was not pre-programmed. It would say, based on what you're watching, here are other people that watch the same things. Here's how AI can recommend it. So companies are using AI all over the place, but we have to ask ourselves how it's going to affect us personally. So I do a survey every year. I call it my State of Business Analytics survey. And this year we surveyed over 250 very large companies, so companies with more than $1 billion per year USD in revenue. And we asked them, how is artificial intelligence going to impact your business? And things at the top, the purple and the red colors, those are either impactful or extremely impactful. So you can see these huge increases. So for instance, you see under Analyze the Past, over 60% of companies say AI is going to be impactful there. You see predicting the future, over 60% say it's going to be impactful. There's an interesting one over there to the right, which is reducing headcount. So I'm going to look at this one in a little more detail. You'll notice that I asked this same question last year, and this was asked of 250 billion plus dollar companies. And last year, people said, I don't think it's going to save us headcount. I don't think it's going to cost us headcount. We're not going to have to hire people. We're not going to have to fire people. Advance 1 year. Notice we now have things at the end of the bell curve where companies are saying 30% of them adding artificial intelligence will eliminate people we currently have to pay. But notice down at the bottom end, 33% say it's actually not going to reduce headcount. It's actually going to stay the same or add headcount because we have to keep doing our jobs, but we're going to want to do additional things in the world of artificial intelligence. So I asked 100 people, what does AI, what do ML, what do they mean to you? And even though I told you AI by default is trying to replicate human behavior, a lot of people think different things. So we asked 100 people, number one answer, human functions performed by machines, which is pretty good. The ability of a machine to make thoughtful and analytical choices. The ability for computers to think like humans. By the way, it's a little bit scary to have a computer thinking like a human. I want them to think better, less biased than a human, which is the next one. Computers thinking for themselves, solving problems without human intervention. Last one's a little bit scary. We've added mind reading. The computer knows what you're thinking and what you're typing. How is AI different from machine learning? A lot of people said that these are similar. They're complementary forms of one another. A lot of people said that one is incremental learning while the other is cognitive learning, but they disagree on which is which. So some people think machine learning is predicting an outcome based on statistics, whereas AI is demonstrating human tasks like speech and vision and decision making. Well, keep in mind, AI is the general category. Machine learning is not just about prediction. You can actually teach something prediction without machine learning, but machine learning means it's getting faster, it's getting better, it is evolving on its own. When we asked people if you use AI in everyday life, the two most popular answers were no and yes in terms of Siri and Alexa. This is kind of a trick question because all of us are using AI in our everyday lives. Every time we access our phone, every time we type something in on Google and it auto completes, every time that we are interacting with a bot, every application we pull up, cars nowadays can even determine when it is you're about to hit the brakes and anticipate, or they can determine there's something in front of you. So we are using AI throughout all of our lives. We just don't realize how much of it we're actually using. But people think, well, maybe it's not in my business life. And our number one answer was no, it's not part of business. Well, it is. As I said, every time you pull up Google, it's not just Google Translate, it's Google Search. If you go type something in and it says, well, have you considered this? Or when you enter something, it says, well, I know you entered this thing, but I'm going to give you something else. That is AI. So chatbots, bots, RPA stands for robotic process automation, where we're taking the manual labor things and replacing them by computers. There are entire industries that have been disrupted by AI. Investments, stock investments have been replaced from traditional stock traders using instinct to what are called quants, people writing algorithms to determine what stocks they should trade, what they should invest in. Baseball. It used to be that baseball scouts, they had this unique ability to look at a baseball player or a cricket player and say, they're going to be an amazing player. Now we can track all that statistically and we can say these players are actually better, and the computers can tell us which players we should pick up, how much we should be paying them. But it is evolving. The number one thing that people said about AI is it's going to improve and replace lower skilled roles. And there are some high skilled roles like stock investing that we thought never would be replaced, but they already have. So things like database administration. We now have Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse, where it's doing a lot of the tuning functions for us. That's only going to continue to improve. So if we are doing something that is very manual, that is very repetitive, we have to adapt our skills to do more with artificial intelligence. So I've been asking this same question for the last 3 years. When do you expect AI to play a significant role? And you'll notice that 3 years ago, it was 5 years out. But now 3 years later, it's within 2 years. I think that in the next couple of years, we are going to see this major impact from AI. At Oracle, artificial intelligence is already here. Oracle has a portfolio of products. They have cloud products. They have open source. They have AI. Artificial intelligence is embedded in many of their cloud applications, so not just Oracle Analytics Cloud, but things like Oracle Fusion Cloud, Oracle Customer Experience, Oracle EPM. It's part of all those. And it's not just used for statistical transformation. It's helping people make better business decisions faster, helping get the right information to the right people at the right time. Now, the computers, at least at the moment, can't take action. They can determine that a product isn't selling well enough and we should change, but they can get that information to the right people. And the computers, and I'll get to this at the very end, are now even be changing to not just give a statistical number or say, this is my conclusion. It's telling people how to go on a journey. It's helping tell a story about that data. And that's a huge part of the modern analytics revolution. There are some things that have been trending over time. We have been pushing for faster and faster data, getting data towards real time. We've been pushing for mobile analysis, self-service, data visualization, natural language so that we can explain it without looking at lots of statistical algorithms. But there are two trends that are coming in and they're going to intersect with all those trends. And these are the trends towards artificial intelligence and big data. Now, if you look 20 years back, analytics was controlled by the IT department. And I consider that generation one of the analytics strategy. Generation one was IT driven. It was about governance, compliance, controlled definitions. But then business people said, I can't wait for IT to get me that data back. I can't wait for someone to build a data warehouse. I need to do that analysis myself. So generation two of analytics is about self-service. Generation three is about saying the humans can't keep up with it. We are going to advance towards computer-driven analysis. And if you think of this, generation one is really IT-driven. Generation two is business-driven. Generation three is really about being computer-driven. And there are a lot of areas that AI is waiting to get into that it still hasn't. And someone asked a question, Sushmita did, about what areas still haven't been expanded into. It's a lot of internal functions. It's business related functions. So we see the outward side. We see them affecting technology. We see them disrupting how we build and administer databases. We don't see them a lot right now being used internally in human resources. We don't see them advising salespeople on how to sell. We don't see them internally recommending to finance people where they should look for certain issues in their financials. That's all coming. It's all built in. So just like when companies invest in research and development, they'll invest in products first, things that meet the end customer. That's where AI started. It's how it faces the outside world, but it's starting to turn internal. So we're going to see a lot of external impacts of AI before we start seeing a lot of internal impacts, and gives us a little time to prepare. Last year, back when I was traveling full-time, I had an interesting experience. I'm based out of Dallas-Fort Worth in the great state of Texas, and I landed at DFW Airport and I requested my Uber. And after a little bit of the person asking, hey, are you the guy in the hat? I want to make sure I'm in the right place, that traditional Uber back and forth. He pulled up and I hopped in. And he asked me where I'd been. And I said, I was in Los Angeles at a conference on how exponential technology will be disrupting many industries. I said, for example, there was an entire session on autonomous vehicles. And my Uber driver said, oh, you don't have to worry about that. Self-driving cars are 20 to 25 years off. Now, this is a full-time Uber driver. He's at ground zero of an entire industry where his company that's employing him, Uber, is about to replace him with a self-driving car. And it's not 20 to 25 years off, it's 2 years off. So this person was the most impacted, yet somehow the least informed person about about AI. He didn't realize his job was going to be replaced. That's why we're here today, because you and I are the most impacted. We live in technology. Because we are the most impacted, we have to be the most informed. So computer-driven analysis is about pivoting away from humans having to do that analysis themselves during those limited hours we can be at the office, to a world where those computers are working for us 24/7. They're finding those patterns. where we have the ability to say, we shouldn't have to go find what is affecting a metric, what is affecting a measure. We should just be able to right click and see it. I'm going to show you what that looks like in a little bit. But we also have to realize the roles of analysts are changing. They're changing from trying to find issues and explain what they are to trying to find solutions and making sure action is actually taken. And it's a battle, because if we keep trying to have humans deal with the data, we are going to get buried. The amount of data at most companies is doubling every 2 years. So how do we deal with that big data? We have to let the computers analyze it. We have to let them sift through it when humans are incapable of doing so. Then we have to use machine learning, not just to make the patterns, the algorithms better. We have to use machine learning to make sure that it's delivering information in a way we like it. We have to make sure that information is delivered in English or Hindi or Bengali or Spanish or Latin, whatever language we speak, the computer has to be able to explain it to us, not just translate, but explain it to us in that language. We shouldn't have to go dig through, sift through all those terabytes, petabytes, exabytes of data. The computer should take it over. So Oracle Machine Learning, there's an entire area of data science, which is called Oracle Data Science. It's a product they can sell that does, as a service, the ability to do data science, but it's also embedded in a lot of applications. When you run the explain functionality inside of Oracle Analytics Cloud, there are actually ML algorithms behind the scenes that calculate and compute all of the insights that you're seeing. When you right click on a chart and you say add a trend or add a reference line or show me my outliers, that's running an ML algorithm. In data flows in OAC, Oracle Analytics Cloud, you can apply ML models to add clusters. You can do natural language processing and generation. You can extend access to your ADW ML models created by data scientists for use by analysts through some features that are coming out. And you can take those trained models and you can register them with OAC. So this says that an IT person, a data scientist, somebody experienced in statistics and computers, can work together with somebody on the business side, and one can create an algorithm, the other person can run that algorithm. So this is Oracle Analytics Cloud, if you haven't seen it recently. And I'm going to start with a blank canvas. And I want to see how my 3 companies' revenue has been for the past 3 years. And I'm going to select a month by company by revenue. Then I'm going to drag company to the trellis rows so that I can see each one separately. And then I want to right click to see a trend. Then I'm going to, there's my trend. Now you'll notice if the data stays pretty small, that kind of gray area is pretty narrow. That's the 95% confidence window that I'm looking at. I also could tell it I wanted to predict the future. So I'm going to right click and choose forecasting. And what that will do is once it's done running the algorithm, it's running it in real time. Notice those 3 months out to the right. And we can do this based on a simple trend. We can actually change the algorithm that it's using. So there are a few models built in, but I could change to ARIMA if I wanted to, and say reforecast. Don't assume flat, assume some more variance, assume there's some seasonality to my business. It's a little bigger of an algorithm, so it'll take maybe about another 5 seconds or so. But these are the algorithms that we already have built. But if we created some additional ones that taught it about our data, if we had high-priced and deservedly so data scientists, notice like in the middle, it's predicting it's going to go up for a bit and then decrease and then go back up again. And notice it's actually doing confidence windows for those predictions. And I can keep changing. I also can modify those predictions. So a human can look at it and say, I don't agree with this output. I really want to revise what it's looking at. And this is about that partnership. A partnership between data scientists and analysts, where a data scientist, somebody behind the scenes working with the computers, will create that ML model. They'll create it in Oracle Machine Learning or in Autonomous Data Warehouse. They'll have an OAC user on the business side that takes that model and then says, I'm going to register it because I want to use it. That OAC user can then apply that Oracle Machine Language model using data flows, and it can run. Now, the nice part about it running is it's running back in the ADW layer. So in the past, the only machine language models you could run in OAC were ones stored in OAC. So if they were stored there, you could use them in data flows and analytics. Eventually, they're going to let you run machine learning models that are stored anywhere. So Oracle Data Science, for instance. So right now, though, those ML models either need to be in OAC or they need to be in Oracle Autonomous Data Warehouse or the Oracle database in general. And there's a reason it's doing that. The reason it wants that algorithm stored in ADW or stored in the Oracle database is because the processing is actually happening there. OAC through their data flow isn't flowing the data to OAC and then processing it. It's doing that portion of the data flow back in the database. And this is really important power-wise, because think about how many more CPUs you probably have devoted, and how much more storage you have devoted to your database versus your analytic model. You don't want to just copy the whole thing. So the data actually stays in the database until the machine learning model creates that final data set. Once it's done, it passes it out, and then we can analyze it there inside of OAC. So now let's talk about what's called NLP, natural language processing. So natural language processing is now part of our everyday lives. There was a movie, Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, and the Starship Enterprise went back in time because they wanted to save humpback whales or something. But this is Scotty and Bones about to interact with a Mac from the 1980s.
Perhaps the professor could use your computer. Please.
Computer? Computer? Ah. Hello, computer.
Just use the keyboard.
The keyboard. How quaint.
So what he was doing was he was assuming that people had always had natural language processing, the ability to actually go out and interact. And we have to ask ourselves, are a keyboard, are a mouse, are a touchpad really the best way to interact with our data? Is language, actually speaking, a better way to interact? And with OAC, we can do two types of natural language processing. We can type in one thing, and really it's translating it behind the scenes. So I might be typing in profit value by product by month, and it's saying, well, we don't have profit value in all the models, but we have profit ratio, we have discounted value, we have numbers of products. Or we can simply speak to it and say, I want to see profit value by product by month, and it can go behind the scenes and find the model it thinks best represents what it is I was actually just asking about. And this doesn't have to be at a computer, it can be on a mobile device. Oracle Day by Day will actually connect to Oracle Analytics Cloud. And it's using natural language processing for the search. So when I type something in or speak it, like show me some numbers for Q1, because I want to see things by revenue, it's going to be able to translate that text. It also understands the time I'm looking at things, the place I am when I look at things. So it begins to learn, oh, every morning at 9 o'clock, Edward asks for revenue, and he wants to see revenue by product type per month. And it will remember those and be able to pull it back. It also gets smarter about what you're looking for. So for instance, if I tend to scroll right by the donut charts because that's not interesting to me, it will stop showing those to me. Or if I don't understand what a radar chart is, it will stop looking at it. It also starts to analyze what the next question is I'm asking. So it may be when I look at revenue by month, I tend to then drill in, double click, and see some additional product categories. It's going to now predict that ahead of time and say, well, instead of you having to ask for it, let's just show it to you as we go forward. Now, this is part of Oracle Analytics Cloud. I am going to give you a free tool by the end. So don't leave. I'll show you a free thing you can do with inside of Oracle Analytics. So let's talk a little bit, not about natural language processing, which all of us understand. We have Siri, we have Alexa, we can talk to a lot of our devices now. Let's talk about natural language generation. So generation is an amazing technology because it replaces a lot of what an analyst will tend to do. So an analyst will tend to look at information, find patterns, find issues, find interesting things about the data, and that analyst will explain it to us. Natural language generation is saying take that function of the analyst and make it part of Oracle Analytics Cloud. So rather than leave the job of visualization up to the user, let OAC generate a visualization, but also textual analysis of what that data set looks like. This first came out actually a couple of years ago, but not a lot of people are aware it's there. It's getting expanded. So you have this capability called explain, where if you right click on a metric or right click on an attribute, it will come back and tell you interesting things about that data, and it will show it to you graphically and in Hindi or English. Insights is part of Synopsis, and I'll explain what Synopsis is in a little bit. And then we also have this amazing thing called language narration, narrative views inside of OAC. So in Oracle Analytics, I've got my nice dashboard, but it's too graphical. I wanted to explain it to me. So I'm going to go to Profit and right click, and that bottom option, it's a little hard to see, says Explain Profit. And it's actually doing some machine learning right now to analyze the data on its own. It wasn't taught what is profit. And it says, well, here are some basic things about it. There are about 9,000 different places where we have profit. Here's the biggest profit I saw. Here's the range. And here are some interesting ways I've discovered to visualize that data. Now notice it's combining. So up top, it was explaining it to me in my language, English, but down below, it's showing it to me graphically. And for each one I think is interesting, I can just go up and click on that little check mark in the corner, and it will add it. It will make it part of my dashboard, some analysis that I can do. So right now I'm looking at a measure. So it's something that has a spectrum. There's no specific pre-planned values, but there are definitely some weird areas of profit. So if I look at it, I can say, well, by customer segment, we predicted for this high area, we would have profit of this. We're actually coming in way below it. And it'll say, we predicted this amount, but we saw a difference of 21,000 between what we actually predicted and what we saw. We saw profit for the customer segment corporate. We thought we'd see 106,000. We actually got 125,000. We got 19,000 more than we actually expected. So notice the language above is explaining what's in the chart before, and it's pretty good language. It's roughly how a human would talk about it. In some cases, it's actually a bit more interesting and finds different patterns than a human would be. Now, if I choose something that has discrete categories, that is a factor, that is an attribute, so in my case, product category, it can break it out even more and say, here's some interesting discrete values, and it can start to explain them in English. So it could still do the basic facts, but now it can say, well, what leads to profit? What leads to these profit in each of these product categories? So when I click on it, again, machine learning behind the scenes is now saying, well, we've looked at it, and the 4 attributes that tend to contribute most to what product category is are things like ship mode, and it'll show us some analysis of ship mode. We say, well, what are the segments that explain the product category? And it's actually giving us the percentages of its model. And it's saying, well, this subcategory tends to contribute to this category. And then we can look at some anomalies, some things where we expect a certain value and see other values. So this is really a combination of visualization along with natural language generation. But natural language generation is also coming to Synopsis. So Synopsis, go out to oracle.com, download this. It is entirely free. It is my favorite application, with the possible exception of Java, that Oracle makes that they don't charge anything for. So you can go get this right now, and it adds into your iPhone or into your Android. And it lets you, when you're emailed a file, so say somebody sends you a spreadsheet or sends you a big text file and you want to analyze it. It's hard to look at on a mobile device. Well, you just click on that file and you say, open that file attachment in Synopsis. And every one of these graphics, all this analysis is actually happening locally. So it's not only using ML to profile the data, it's using machine learning to auto-generate the charts and show you the best way to analyze them. It can take in spreadsheets, it can take in data, but most interestingly, the newest version actually has the ability to generate natural language, to actually show you insights about the data. So for instance, in June, the domestic gross was 13.67% higher than the average. By the way, I'm analyzing a movies set of data that I was sent to analyze the top movies for this particular year. I am a movie junkie, both Bollywood and Hollywood. So notice I can click in and see the graphics. Now it's giving me ranges. I never told it to, but it says, well, your budget tends to go for a movie from 25 million to several hundred million. I could see it on a bubble chart. This is a graph of budget for a movie versus domestic gross for a movie. So the bigger the budget is, the more money it tends to make in the United States. So all this happens locally. And again, Synopsis is entirely free. So going back to Oracle Analytics, now this part is indistinguishable from magic. This is truly, truly amazing. I'm dragging in a language narrative chart type. Now I'm doing it in English, but I want to see for this narration company, and I want to see it by revenue. And it comes back and it says for these 3 companies, they have a value of $5 million in total revenue. The largest stock plus is 40.69% of your total revenue. If I want, I can break it down and say, I don't want to see it by company. I want to see it per month. And I want to see the month number. I want to see the month name. And it says, well, we looked at it and there are 2 different categories. We noticed that the biggest category of increase is from June of 17 to June of 2020. We peaked a couple times in January 2018. We can add some breakdowns. I can say I want to see it by month, but I want to see by month by category. And it tells me the overall trend, it tells me what that individual breakdown actually looks like. Now, it is doing this in real time. It's actually able to generate all of this data while I'm looking at it. I could swap it around and say, I want company to be on the outside, then I want you to show me within company, I want to break it down by name. And it can say, well, for your 3 biggest companies in 2018, revenue varied a lot. It fluctuated a ton. January 2020 revenue fluctuated as well. But look at January 2018, there are a lot of rises and falls. So we can continue to break down that information and notice it's adding prediction lines, it's adding forecast lines without me ever telling it to do it. It just simply knows these are good ways to go and analyze all that information. Now, does this replace our jobs? Does this replace the ability to build a database? Well, at the moment, someone still has to go create that database of information, but they're working on that. They're basically willing to say, just aim me at the underlying data source and I can figure out what profit is. I can figure out what revenue is. I can figure out what my expenses are, my units are, my headcount. So right now they're focusing on the customer facing side, basically how do things look, but they are going to go back in and start being able to generate the databases as necessary as well. I'm not talking today much about Essbase because I'm focusing on Oracle Analytics Cloud because it's the fastest for all of you to get up and running. But Essbase, for instance, can look at a database now, or look at a table, an export, or a spreadsheet, and figure out how to build an Essbase database built on it. It can actually use AI and machine learning. So in a lot of cases, our job right now is to make sure our database is really easy for OAC to consume. So we can take a database, and people are asking some questions about this, where we can have a purpose-driven table or a purpose-driven view that makes it really easy for Oracle Analytics to consume. But our job, if I could advise you all on something, really needs to be about artificial intelligence. It needs to be about machine learning. So again, somebody asked a question about Synopsis. Go back, please go out to oracle.com. Oracle.com is page Synopsis. It'll take you to the download for it. You do not need Oracle Analytics Cloud to use this product. It is 100% free. So when somebody sends you a file, like a data file or a spreadsheet file, it will open up inside. You can tell it to open up inside a Synopsis. And all of that analysis that I was showing you before, so somebody sent me a file on movies, all that analysis will happen automatically on your mobile device. It can happen on a tablet, it can happen on a phone, and it's doing it all locally. This type of thing used to only be possible on a massive server, but as our phones are getting more and more powerful, Synopsis is able to now run purely locally. And again, costs absolutely nothing, which I think is the best part about it. So where is the world going? Where are we headed with what's coming next? Well, what Oracle is focusing on is they're making a big push towards artificial intelligence to machine learning. They're focusing on what's called adaptive intelligence. And adaptive intelligence is figuring out what you're going to be asking next. So where is your train of thought going? So not, somebody said earlier, AI is about what are you currently thinking? Adaptive intelligence is about what are you going to be thinking? So when you see this data, the computer is about to show you, what is the next question you're probably going to ask? And it will get smarter and smarter. It will be able to adapt to your responses. It's getting better and better with its models. It now knows how to create a model, figure out what the percentages are, and then evaluate the model. So when it creates it, it can look back and say, well, how does that model need to change? Because maybe it didn't predict the correct results. Right now, worldwide, a lot of companies are impacted by COVID. So a lot of the AI routines are predicting things that are incorrect, and then they're overreacting. They're saying, wow, our business suddenly stopped in April or May or June. We have to assume it's going to continue to stop. Well, we have to factor that out. So humans are not replaceable yet. We can definitely come in and say, yes, there's something worldwide happening to the economy. I need to override what your results are. But for the moment, they will take that information, they will overanalyze it, but eventually we'll factor it in and say, we have to have more uncertainty in our forecast because things like COVID-19, coronavirus can happen, and we have to understand what that impact is going to be. Another major thing that Oracle is working on is where they are trying to change from just showing you visualizations to being able to interact with you like an analyst answering your questions. So think of it as a chat bot, but the chat bot can go beyond answering what happened. It can go beyond answering where it happened or how it happened. It can get into why it happened. So say the computer told you, we have missed our budget by 10%. You can ask the system, why did we miss our budget? It will go analyze all the information and say, we missed our budget because China sales were under what we expected. We think they budgeted too high, or we think their actuals came in too low. And then eventually it's going to use that information about the questions you ask, the patterns that you go through when asking, and it's going to turn it into a narrative. So it's going to be able to become a storyteller. So rather than just jump to the conclusion, you missed your profit by 10%, it'll say, we created a new product in the West and we thought it would do really well. And we budgeted this amount, but it started more slowly than we expected. We added some marketing expense, but it didn't have the impact that we expected. So eventually we added some more people selling it, and it didn't increase the level we wanted. Now we are 20% under our expected budget at this point. And eventually they'll be able to say, maybe we should quit doing this product and stop being a darned fool about it, because it's trying to make us better at business productivity. So if you're worried that all of our jobs will be replaced by computers, there are some things that AI and robots are still bad at. There was a study that came out in December, so at the tail end of 2019, and it came out from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. And these are the 10 hardest activities currently for an AI working together with a robot. And what stuns me is how fast AI has advanced in the last year. So there are 10 things that we still do much better than computers. So if your job is predicated on, if your whole income is based on your ability to drink coffee, smoke a cigarette, and gargle mouthwash, good job, because the computers are still really bad at all three of those. Other interesting ones, it's bad at face washing. So it's having a hard time replacing things like nurses. It's bad at polishing furniture. It tends to over scrub it. It's hard for it to come really close. It's also bad at throwing darts, high jump, shot put, and running a marathon. But that is all we are down to. So please, please make sure your job, your future is about artificial intelligence. I will give you this on a lighthearted note before we open it up to some more questions. There are some questions coming in, so if you have anything else you're thinking about or curious about, please put those in the Q&A, and I'll answer those in a second. But in the world of Hollywood, they tend to be about 5 years ahead of what you see in a video game running on your local computer. Well, we used to want to make movies, and we would want people to look younger than they really were. So we would put them in a whole lot of makeup. Well, then they came out with a technology where a computer programmer could go frame by frame in the movie and make someone look younger. They could remove a wrinkle. So they could highlight and say, this person has a crease in their forehead. I want to remove that. And I'm going to take the whole person's face. I'm going to make them brighter. Well, now a computer can just look, and we can tell it, make this person look 30 years younger, And we don't have to tell it what that means. We just show pictures of people from 30 years ago to now. And we say, make this new picture, go back and look at that old one. Make the new video, go back and look at the old one. So there's a movie on Netflix called The Irishman. And you see on the left, that's Robert De Niro as he currently looks. So he has gray hair, he has a lot of wrinkles, his face is fairly pale. They wanted to show many years earlier, 30 years earlier in the movie. So Martin Scorsese paid millions of dollars US on AI to de-age. It wasn't just De Niro, it could actually de-age any of the main characters, like Joe Pesci got de-aged as part of the movie. Al Pacino got de-aged. So they looked at each one and they simply said, take this person, and whenever they show up in a scene and you find their face in that scene, make them be 30 years younger. And the machine learning, the AI, did it very realistically. So it doesn't look like it's painted on. It looks much better than makeup actually does. Say what you will about how bad the movie actually is or how long it actually is, the technology is amazing. So within 5 years, this is going to come to any video game that you'll see. So you'll be able to put yourself into the game, and the game will say, well, let's go back and look at how you were when you were 15 years old. And then you could play through that part of it. And now how they look now, then it can age you into the future as well. So this goes beyond a deep fake video where it actually uses deep learning. We're actually doing this in real time. And talk about real time, we do have COVID-19 going around the world. In Seattle, Washington, in the United States, this is just one example I found. There is a hospital called Providence St. Joseph's. And Seattle was our first outbreak in the United States. It's back in early March when we thought this would be very, very local. They had 40,000 patients all worried that they had coronavirus, they had COVID-19. And they wanted to figure out which ones were the most severe because they couldn't see all 40,000. That hospital normally sees hundreds, not tens of thousands of patients on a given day. So they took a chat bot, and they didn't teach the chat bot when the person says this, they have coronavirus. They didn't have time. They took the chat bot and they said, here are all of our cases with coronavirus. Here are all of our cases without coronavirus. When somebody comes in, try and tell us whether you think they have it or you think they don't have it, so that our doctors, our nurses can focus on those at-risk individuals rather than focus on everybody else. So they said that that was their ability to deal with, to respond to all those people coming in. I'm going to leave you on a very positive note. So this helped us get by COVID-19. AI jobs are growing amazingly throughout the world. This is from that same MIT article. So if you want to see it, go Google 2019 AI report tracks profound growth, and it's all about the growth in AI. So notice that top bullet point. This is very important to all of you. The 5 countries where AI hiring grew the most in the entire world in the last 5 years: Singapore, Brazil, Australia, Canada, and India. So from your standpoint, AI is your future, and you can get into it right now. You don't have to have a degree in artificial intelligence or a background in machine learning. You can go get a copy of Oracle Analytics Cloud, and you can start running and generating those AI, those machine learning algorithms. 58% of companies say that they have AI in at least one of their functions. Notice that was 47% just a year earlier. So you might think, that's an 11% increase. It's actually a 25% increase because basically a fourth as many more people, companies are now using AI, and that's in but a single year. In the United States, if you go back a decade ago, only 1 in 400 IT jobs are related to AI. Now it's 1 in 80 are related to AI. Machine learning is the largest portion of that. So 1 in every 200 IT jobs right now is AI based, and it's a flood. It's going to happen faster and faster. So I have one final slide, and then I'll answer some questions that are coming in. Walt Disney and the Disney theme parks are starting to reopen around the world. And Walt Disney is known for being a creative person, basically someone who came up with all kinds of new great ideas. But he said at a certain point, what separates me from all the other people is that I know when I need to quit talking and begin doing. So that's what we all need to do, is figure out how to actually translate all these things we are hearing about. Somebody said, how can we use the machine learning model created in data mining or an Oracle machine language in OAC? Right now, you need to take that model out of data mining or OML. You can actually import it into Oracle Analytics Cloud. So for instance, say you had a model and exported it out as like R. You can take that and there's an import tool inside of OAC. It actually comes in as part of the data flow, or you can actually load it as a new model, a new algorithm. What they are working on is leaving that ML model in Oracle Machine Learning, leaving it in data mining and not having to have you export it, import it out. And that's not only on the roadmap, but Safe Harbor, that's coming very soon. So you will have the ability to generate all of your data mining models over there and just have it go grab them. Another thing you can do is take those ML models and apply them back, as I said earlier, to either ADW, Autonomous Data Warehouse, or back to the Oracle database, and then it will just use those models in data mining, or I'm sorry, use those models in ADW Oracle database to run. Is there a way to view all the models that are created? Yes, there's a way to see them all in ADW. It's really easy to see them in Oracle Analytics Cloud. It's actually because when you go into data flows, you have to register them and it will show you a list of all the models that are registered. So with an Oracle Analytics Cloud, there are some kind of starter ones that it gives you. So you saw earlier it ran, for instance, an ARIMA model. But if you wanted to create, I don't know, an ANOVA model, or say you knew that your sales had a multivariable quadratic regression model, you could create that model, register it, and then within OAC, you can get a quick list of all those models you have registered. Once they are registered, a user sees them from a dropdown. So I showed it to you earlier when I was showing the prediction capabilities inside of OAC. It's a little hard to see, but I went to the left and clicked a little dropdown for models. That's all the models that had been registered with OAC. Similarly, you can take a machine learning model written in Python. Any model you have, as long as that model is something OAC can understand. So most commonly it's R, secondarily it's Python. There are some other languages out there you could use, Groovy, things like that. Once you have that code, you basically go to OAC and you tell it to register it. There's a simple interface, kind of roughly equivalent to registering like an ODBC driver to get that model registered. Once it's registered, you can either access it through a data flow, and I know I'm not giving you an entire OAC class, although parts of me wonder if I should do a whole class on OAC. Within data flows, you can tell it as the data flows in, it wants you to grab it and use that model, or you can tell it you want to run it kind of at runtime, as I was showing you in the demonstration earlier. There's a lot of great questions coming in. Does anybody else have anything further? I know we're at about 5 minutes before the top of the hour, which is a
Maybe you can pick one question, so that other questions we can all answer offline.
Sure. Final question. Can an ML model be applied in Synopsis or day by day? Not directly. And what I mean by that is you can't take the ML model and download it to the day by day app or to the Synopsis app, but both Synopsis and day by day can connect to Oracle Analytics Cloud. So within OAC, you can, if you have that machine learning model, you can consume it inside of day by day or inside of Synopsis. And that is an excellent question to end with. And back over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Edward. A very insightful session on analytics, especially I like the Irishman example, making films with AI. So it's really wonderful to know. I think we see a lot of good things about AI coming in. Thank you very much. And, participants, you can see Edward's Twitter ID here. Please, if you want to thank him or if you have any questions, so you can reach out to Twitter. And you can also connect with him in LinkedIn or website or whatever. So a few announcements, I think maybe a boring slide for many of you, but again, we need to cover because every call is a new participants, right? So this is more of learn and win program. For example, attend more sessions and more points. 1 minute equals to 1 point. Also, we have a bonus points in social media activities. We will track your social media activities and we will provide points end of the yatra. And there are much benefits you can see from you'll get a membership of platinum so that you have unlimited recordings, and you can watch anytime. So those benefits. And also you can see your points from this particular page. And here is a navigation. Go to home page. You'll click on this and it will go to here, or you can directly go to ogyatra_points. And we have a special kids program. Maybe we'll stop promoting tomorrow because we are already reached 110, but we have still few slots. So please, if you want to bring your kids we will basically teach robotics. So that is really helpful because you don't require to buy any stuff here, expensive stuff. This is all can be done, using computer, right? And this is very important slide. As you mentioned, continue your conversation and networking with, using OG Yatra hashtag and AIOG hashtag. And the presentation material will be available after the Yatra program. And we have a special program coming in on 11th of July, fireside chat with, speakers like Sandesh, Marcus, and Elon, Rack. And we also have a Connor and Chris on Ask Tom team. Also, I'm trying to bring all the ACE community into a couple of calls on 11th of July. So please watch out for more updates in our website. Important thing is speaker feedback. Okay. Also, it's not only speaker feedback. If you want to ask any questions, so please put it in suggestions box or questions box, so that we will pass it to speaker. And for example, if you want to learn something from Edward, please let us know, right? So that we can reach out to Edward and find out his availability, and that way we can schedule another webinar with that. So the next one and the last one of today is coming is Oracle Cloud Learn to Use Analytics from Bashir Khan in few minutes. So with that, thank you very much, Edward, your time and support. Maybe we'll engage you very soon in our webinar series. Thank you very much. Have a good day.